Hey, Sens fans, welcome to the first episode of the Senstennial's fourth season. We've spent a lot of time away on vacation this summer, but finally, all three of us are back and ready to record. So we're super excited for the 2022-23 season to get underway. Ottawa's made some big trades, some big signings, big extensions that came out this summer, and we're going to recap all of that and then get you primed for this coming season. So let's kick things off with the offseason acquisitions. It feels like so long ago. We touched on Alex DeBrincat a little bit when we had Tony and Will on for a live stream after the draft. But Alex DeBrincat is an Ottawa Senator, 41 goals last season. Bennett, what do you think about that acquisition for the Senators?
Yeah, I mean, I was completely on record on Twitter, on this podcast, of saying there was no way this was possible. There was no way that we were going to land a player of DeBrincat's quality with trading that 7th overall pick. And Dorion proved me wrong, and I am so glad that he did, because DeBrincat is just a huge upgrade to our top 6. I mean, this is a guy who scored 78 points last year. He's a 2-time 40-goal scorer, and he's only 24 years old, which puts him right in the wheelhouse of all of the other Sens young stars that are in the process of getting locked up by the team, which is also something to be excited about. I think that, the only thing that I've seen that's like a possible kind of like caveat or possible negative to this trade is the fact that he's only signed for, I think, 1 to 2 more seasons, and then like the Sens are gonna have to give him a contract. But to me, like, this just things are changing with his team. Locking up star players is, knock on wood, looking like something that we might not struggle as much with in the next few years. And I think ultimately, and this is the important part, good teams, the teams that win Stanley Cups and the teams that we presumably wish to emulate, don't think about contracts when they go out and sign good players. They sign, or they trade, or they do whatever they need to do to bring talented players on the roster, and they move whoever they need to move to make it work after that. Because you get good players, and good players create opportunities for you, and that's what DeBrincat does for us.
And not only that, but he adds an actual scoring threat that Tim Stützle can pass to. Playing with guys like Chris Tierney, Adam Gaudette, even Alex Formenton. I know Alex Formenton has had some good offensive flashes, but he's not a second line guy. He's not a guy you permanently put in your top 6. Tim Stützle now has a legit goal scorer that he can pass to.
Yeah.
So anyway, other Matt, what do you think about that addition?
It's hard not to be super excited about it. And I think, Bennett, your pessimism over the Senators over this summer went from almost an all-time high to the hilarious low that is, you're fully on the Sens train, and there's no station in sight.
It was a complete 180. I mean, within the course of a month, I went from being an absolute Sens doomer to just we're a playoff team, whatever.
and what's hilarious is I think it was all a caveat because of the Kevin Fiala to the LA move. And Dorion missing out on a player of that caliber. But I mean, I think when we did a podcast about it, and some of the options were Philip Forsberg, Kevin Fiala, Alex DeBrincat was one of them, and then there was Nichushkin and some lesser guys to fill out that top 6. DeBrincat was the best player available, but he was the most, I want to say, outlandish choice. And I remember when the rumblings started occurring that Sens were looking at, other options other than Fiala, we got worried. We're like, oh no, or are we going to be the team that overpays for Nazem Kadri? But I remember being in Superstore, I was with Rebecca, and I'm looking at my phone just because everything was pointing to something happening. And it was like a 10-minute span. And it sounded like it was down to, it was either a Jacob Chikrin move or an Alex DeBrincat move. And when I saw it was like Chikrin to the Senators, oh my God, I audibly was like, holy shit.
You mean DeBrincat?
DeBrincat, yeah. I'm still excited about it.
Well, I was at the draft. And I remember the trade happened. And I was with my girlfriend. We ended up going to the arena. And, she's a Habs fan, so she's got her Habs jersey on. I've got my Sens jersey. And I look around, I just see this other dude in a Sens jersey. And we both look at each other. And we like ran towards each other and just like, we're like, dude, Alex DeBrincat. And we're freaking out. And he was with his buddy who is also a Habs fan. So it was just really funny.
It's one of those moves that really starts a movement. And I think there was always question marks of what Pierre Dorion was actually capable of. And I think already it has to be, probably his best move he's ever made as the Sens GM, simply because of the assets that were used to get DeBrincat were nothing. Like they used our pick on Kevin Korchinski, who is a massive reach at that point. So, if it was Matthew Zavoy, that'd be like, okay, all right, I can, pause for concern, but I just don't see Korchinski having that same upside. Whereas Alex DeBrincat has scored 41 goals twice. And he's playing with Patrick Kane. Well, now you have him coming over and playing with Tim Stützle, who a lot of people likened Stützle's game to Patrick Kane's, and they're both very smart hockey IQ people. And I mean, DeBrincat is an all-star. Like, he's not just an all-star because he goes to the all-star game. He's a bona fide all-star. And I think that was like the domino that started all of these amazing things to start happening for the Sens. And Pierre Dorion had a heck of a summer, and that was just like the first thing he did.
Yeah. Now, and speaking of the dominoes, I mean, the next thing to fall right after DeBrincat, and a relatively quick one too, was Matt Murray getting traded to Toronto, and helping us get out from under that nasty contract. We had to send a third to them to sweeten the deal. And a 2024 7th round pick, and futures considerations back, but it did give us the flexibility to go out and acquire Cam Talbot from Minnesota, who we flipped Gustafsson for in a 1-for-1 deal, which is another nice move. And then ultimately, this all leads to free agent frenzy. Claude Giroux, 3 years, 6.5 AAV, which was like the other white whale of like the Sens off season. And Dorion acquired them both. And I can flip it back to you, Matt, but just like an opportunity there to just kind of like rapid fire all the crazy stuff that happened in such a short span earlier this summer.
Yeah, and I mean, first of all, I know other Matt is probably dying to talk about goalies. Cam Talbot, he made the All-Star game by virtue of, not putting up hugely impressive numbers for the Minnesota Wild, but he was very steady, and he had over 30 wins for them last season. I don't think that's anything to scoff at. You obviously have to be a good goalie to help your team get over 30 wins just on him alone, not even, a backup. Marc-Andre Fleury is brought in to replace him, but, Marc-Andre Fleury is Marc-Andre Fleury. He's a future Hockey Hall of Famer. I think if that guy's on the trade market, a lot of teams are going to take a look at that and try to make a pitch.
Absolutely.
So it happens. It didn't work out there. Him and Forsberg, he'll be a nice tandem here. I'll get to Claude Giroux, but I'll let Matt chime in on the Cam Talbot acquisition.
I think it's important to talk about the Murray trade before the Talbot move, simply because it goes back to the doom and gloom that Bennett was talking about. He was at this point of no return almost, and I think a lot of Sens fans were, because it looked like for a second Matt Murray, his last save and the biggest save he ever made for the Ottawa Senators was blocking a trade to the Buffalo Sabres that included that first round pick.
That became DeBrincat.
I will say though
to
jump in, the trade for DeBrincat was going to happen regardless if Matt Murray went to Buffalo or not.
Yeah.
So apparently the only difference would have been that a prospect would have been involved, but I'm glad that didn't happen because if Ridley Gregg or someone else had been involved, that's a little harder to swallow than just, some futures that you never know if the player will be good or bad. It's a draft.
Plus there's a unique quality to sending, Matt Murray like a poisoned chalice to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you can just imagine like opening night at, the Scotiabank Arena, whoever they're playing in their first game, and the other team walks in and scores with their first shot, and like Sens fans just sitting there like, have fun, Toronto. It's just like the opportunity to just do them like that. It was just too good to pass up.
I know that Murray was a Sens fan, or not a Sens fan, a Leafs fan growing up. So it's one of those things where, you're happy for him and you want to see him succeed and all that stuff. And I genuinely, I hope he does succeed. If he plays like Jack Campbell, they didn't really lose much. But for us, it was done. Like, you had 2 seasons. He went to the AHL. You had all of this stuff happen. The relationship was gone, and it was the only move that really made sense going forward. And then you have this hole at backup, because a lot of people, weren't sure with Philip Gustafsson if he would be able to shoulder the load, because you bring in Cam Talbot, and we're talking about Talbot now probably splitting the season with Forsberg, whereas with Gustafsson he probably gets like 20 games. Does it suck that we gave up Gustafsson? For me, I think Gustafsson is still a legit goalie prospect that I believe will be a starter in the NHL. But with Minnesota, they have Wallstedt. Like, he may bounce from there to somewhere else. But the beautiful thing is we just got an all-star goalie who had a heck of a season last year on a Minnesota Wild team that's not so much different than the Ottawa Senators are going to be this coming season. I think we have a lot of really bright spots, and I think our goaltending specifically is going to be one of the brightest going forward.
Now, Claude Giroux, as Bennett was mentioning. Now, I know
Big G, let's go.
There's a lot of Claude Giroux connections in this market, so I'm pretty sure everybody and their dog knew that he was going to be signing with Ottawa. There were multiple people who said, on Twitter that rumors, rumblings, sources that they knew that he was signing in Ottawa. I heard the same from someone that I know who has ties to Giroux's agent, and
I remember that group chat message.
Exactly. So I think the night before, when the New York Rangers, some rumor about the New York Rangers being interested popped up, people were worried. And I'm like, there's no way. Like, there's been so much chatter about him signing with Ottawa. It's done as soon as free agency opens. And sure enough, 5 minutes into free agency, we get an announcement that he signed with the Ottawa Senators for 3 years. Now,
well, and like the night before, Bob McKenzie was like, there aren't many surefire things going into free agency, but it was like Andrew Kopp to Detroit was basically done. And then another one was done, but Giroux to Ottawa was done. They just needed to put the paperwork in, which, speaks to the whole tampering thing, but I don't care. We got Claude Giroux.
Didn't happen at all. He called him up right at noon and said, let's go. Buddy.
Absolutely.
No, but anyway, Claude Giroux, what a phenomenal signing. And regardless of his age, he was one of the best free agents, and the Sens didn't overpay, in my opinion, for him. And they didn't give him a lengthy contract that you'd have to worry about being bought out. At worst, I'd say in the final year of his contract, he may have declined to a level that is under the $6.5 million dollar salary that he's, well, I know he's not being paid that in real salary, if you will, that year, but anyway, he's still a very respected player, extremely solid veteran. From our Twitter account today, I quote retweeted a little snapshot that the NHL Network posted on their Twitter feed, where Scott Hartnell, who's a former teammate of Claude Giroux when Scott Hartnell was on the Flyers, he had high praise for Claude Giroux, said he's going to help all the young centers with their face-off taking, brings an element that is going to be key to that locker room. He said, he doesn't have the same wheels as Tim Stützle, but he's a good player, and he was really excited about the direction of the Sens, and he thinks that they could be a team that goes ahead and makes the playoffs this year. So I think it was a phenomenal signing. I'm really excited to see him come to the team. And this is one of those guys where when the Sens are like, yeah, we wanted character veterans over the last few seasons, it's like, here you get a guy who's not only a character veteran, but actually a really solid player still, helps your power play, probably can play on your PK if you want, play 5-on-5 minutes. He can do anything. He's still a top 6 forward. So that's just huge for the team. And it gives Tim Stützle not one option on his wing, but 2 options of guys who are going to be really solid, who can put up points with him. So I think it's very exciting.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll say about Giroux before we can move on is many months ago when we were talking about, who do we hope that the Sens can land in the off season? I think I mentioned that Giroux would be great because I feel like our sort of ranks of hometown heroes, if you will, with the Sens. The Sens, like in the years that I've watched them, have seemingly always had like 1 or 2 guys with like Ottawa roots or connections on the roster that, just like it's nice to have for like the vibes and for the fans and just for, like for everything. And having Giroux, fulfill that role now is great as well. Having a guy, I mean, like his family's here, he brought his son to the press conference, to sign the contract with him and, like sit up at the panel. It was very cute and wholesome. And, having another local guy, I know he's from Hearst, Ontario, but he lives in the Ottawa Gatineau area. So that's, it's just cool. Yeah.
And it's really cool to see him get an A too.
Yes.
Clearly his leadership spans across the NHL, where people respect him and will follow him. And I mean, he had a 65-point season last year, and I think he's going to score more this upcoming season because of who he's going to be playing with. So stay tuned on that one.
And beyond just the acquisitions the Sens made, a lot of people were worried about the future of some of the young players and their contract situation. And, Josh Norris, we heard early in the spring, Pierre Dorion's like, we're talking, we want to get an extension done. And then, summer started to drag on. People like, okay, what's happening? And later that week, after they signed Claude Giroux, they extend Norris for 8 years at a hair under $8 million per year. So that was huge for the organization. You get Josh Norris, who kind of had a weird first 2 years where he was better defensively his first year. And then in his sophomore year, he was better offensively. So hopefully he can find some good balance there, but a hell of a young player. You now have him signed until he's like 31. And Tim Stützle, he gets an 8-year deal, just above AAV wise of Brady Tkachuk. He gets that little extra on top with that 8.35. Honestly, that's huge as well. And like everyone was wondering, if Tim Stützle has a hell of a season this year, is he going to want like 9.5 or more? Well, now you don't have to worry about that. Doesn't matter. It could end up looking like a Drake Batherson style contract, where all of a sudden he explodes this year, and you're talking about a guy who might have asked for over 9.5, and now you don't have to worry about that. So those 2 big extensions, Bennett, I'll let you touch on those, what you thought of them.
Yeah, I'll go chronologically, so I'll talk about Norris first. I think first and foremost, I mean, so great to see him locked in long term. He's going to be with us throughout the competitive window that, even just like a few short months ago, I didn't think we would have a competitive window, but here we are. So having him locked in is great. I remember listening to the 32 Thoughts with Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick around the time that this contract was signed. and they drew a very explicit connection. A very explicit contrast between the Tkachuk negotiations the previous year and the Norris extension, and how much had changed with the team in the intervening season. You know, you had the Tkachuk negotiations that dragged, and he missed a couple games at the start of the season before he was finally signed. Whereas, Norris, getting it done early, getting it done in the off season on the back of DeBrincat, Giroux, Tkachuk, and then it's like you see those dominoes, right? It's like, when Tkachuk commits to the team, then, and then we see like the good roster moves of bringing DeBrincat, shedding Murray, bringing on Giroux. All of a sudden, when you do good moves, the next good move comes easier, right? And this is where we start to see that domino effect throughout this off season, the summer of Pierre that everyone's been talking about. Literally, like people in like the streets, like for the first time this summer in a while, when I go around wearing my Sens ball cap, people will be like, "Hey, yeah, Senators, what a summer, right?" Anyway, getting sidetracked. But yes, I think my one concern with the Norris deal, I think of Norris and Stützle, the Norris one is the one that's the most likely to be an overpayment. And I see the most potential for him not living up to this contract. Not that I think it's going to be like a bad contract. I just think like it'll just be not like the best contract in the world. Because Norris, he obviously had a really great offensive season last year, scoring, what was that, 35 goals, I think, off the top of my head. But he had very few assists, and he scored most of those goals in the power play. So we didn't see a ton of 5-on-5 shot generation from him, and we didn't see a ton of playmaking from him. And I think that does give him a little bit more limited utility, especially for a 1C, if that's what we envision him being. Now there's a possibility it's just to leapfrogs him here. But all that is to say, I think that 7.95, it's great, and I'm glad that it's under 8, and I'm glad that we locked him in. I think that if it had been a little bit closer to 7 and less close to 8, I would have been, absolutely thrilled. But that's my one concern there. Oh, and I guess, I mean, like, just I'll just like quickly add my thoughts here before I turn it over to you, Matt. I think this again, like the dominoes, is another big step for the franchise. Getting this deal done early, a year out, getting him locked in long term, along with the rest of this young core. He becomes the highest paid player in Sens history by shading Tkachuk there, and yeah, I just think it's such a huge positive thing. I think Timmy is, primed for an absolutely like monster season. He's gonna have elite line mates to skate with him for the first time in his Sens career. I heard the interview with him on 32 Thoughts, the other week. Elliot and Jeff, kept commenting on how big he was and how fit and, like primed he looked. He started, seeing like a sleep coach. He's like working on his like general fitness. Like the guy is ready to go. And I think that 8.4 AAV for his 8-year extension is going to be a bargain in a couple of years. 100%.
I completely agree there. I think both of the numbers right this second seem a little high, obviously, looking at the point totals they put up and, some of their defensive play and stuff. I think after this season, we'll see them be worth their contracts. I think the biggest thing that a lot of people were saying was Josh Norris had a crazy high shooting percentage, and he can't hold that for the rest of his career or whatever. And I mean, he's done it most of his career as it stands. He's a smart shooter. He knows when to take his opportunities and find the back of the net. It would not surprise me in the slightest to see him hit 40 goals next year. I would like to see his playmaking ability sort of take another step, but that'll come. He'll have consistency with line mates, with having Batherson and Tkachuk consistently there, as opposed to them sort of moving down because, Formenton wasn't playing well with Stützle. And then Tim Stützle gets a crazy contract that, probably like 2 weeks into the season looks like an underpayment. He's going to earn his nickname of Timmy Superstar this year. And I think it's going to be really amazing to see the Sens have a superstar of his caliber and like playing at such an elite level. Because, we've gone through the trenches and we have never gotten a first overall pick, and we did all this stuff. The vibes were terrible. Like everything around the team for a long time was bad. But I think it all changed with the Brady Chuck pick. But I think the Stützle pick is what is going to be the beacon that leads the Sens to the Stanley Cup. And one thing that I don't want overshadowed in the summer of the Hot Pierre Summer is the Mathieu Joseph extension. Is a 4-year, 2.95 AAV for a player who is going to be playing third line minutes. And quite honestly, like I can see him having a heck of a season playing with Pinto and then whomever is in that other third wing spot where we're not sure with Fermenton's contract stuff going on and the rest of it. So we'll see how that goes. But and then the Erik Brännström, 1 year, like I don't even think it was $1 million.
It was no, yeah. It was. Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, it was like $900K.
Yeah, so I think that's an excellent contract. I think Brandstrom wants to show himself, and that's sort of him wanting to do that. I really hope he gets the opportunity he deserves, and then we'll see where it goes. But overall, all of the contract extensions this summer were pretty prime, especially like the Stützle one, as they announced it with that big press conference. Things were happening with some of the new like blogger insiders that were there. Everything about the Sens is different this year, and from the Melnick sisters to showing support for a lot of things that the Sens previously wouldn't. Everything about them is different, and I think the on ice product is really going to show that. And the vibes are immaculate.
Yeah, and I think Joseph was definitely an underrated signing. And honestly, I had completely forgotten about it until you brought it up. I totally forgot that he'd re-signed for 4 years. He's going to be great on the penalty kill. He's got so much speed. I think he's a smart player who just didn't get enough minutes in Tampa Bay because their team was so deep that he was limited to a fourth line role when really he can play above that. So yeah, like that. For Erik Brännström, I mean, we'll see what happens. He definitely has to prove himself. I think he really had flashes of offensive brilliance, but it just didn't come out enough. And he had a lot of power play minutes on the first line power play when Chabot was injured, and I don't think he made the most of it. Now, that's not me saying that I don't have faith in him and I don't want him on the roster. I just would like to see more from him because, I mean, I'm not going to try, like the Stone trade has happened and that's in the past now. I just want to see him become a contributing player on the Sens. I would love to see him become a Sam Girard-esque player, even a little bit under that. Like that would be huge. Do I think that's going to happen? No, but it would be really amazing to see it. So, but we'll move to depth players now because we have Tyler Motte, who came in late in the summer on a 1 year, I believe, 1.35 mil deal. And then Derick Brassard, former Ottawa Senator, and Michael Colle, who played, I believe, under DJ Smith in junior. They both get signed to PTOs. So that gives the Sens a lot of depth players to take a look at. And yeah, I don't know. I guess, Bennett, what are your thoughts on those depth signings and going to training camp with Brassard and Colle?
Yeah, I think always good to have a few kind of like fringe veteran guys like in the mix. Not not for prominent roles, but for depth roles. I think that, having those guys around for camp and, possibly lingering on the edges of the roster or fulfilling a fourth line role or a bottom pairing role, is helpful. I think, Tyler Motte, he brings a lot of physicality and hustle, and that's basically what you want out of a fourth liner. He played in 15 of New York Rangers 20 playoff games this past postseason, so he has some recent playoff experience, which teams love. Derick Brassard, had some success as an Ottawa Senator in the past, memorably in the 2017 run. Having him around could be cool. It'd be great if he could maybe like snatch that fourth line center role, give us a center depth of, say Norris, Stützle, Pinto, Brassard. That's pretty cool. I'd be down with that. So yeah, I hope they can add something to the team.
I mean, they're fourth liners. I think the Tyler Motte one is probably the most beneficial. I know he has center and left wing experience, and I could definitely see him outplaying Gambrell. I just think Gambrell is a very forgettable player. A lot of people, a lot of Rangers fans were super upset that they lost Mott. He seems like one of those energy banger guys on the fourth line that can do a lot with a little, and that's what you need. Like I'm very okay with a fourth line of Kelly, Mott, and Watson. I think you're not moving him off of that line because he's like a favorite in the room and all that sort of stuff. But if that's your fourth line, I'm pretty happy with that. I just don't see Brassard being okay with an AHL deal, and Del Cole is definitely an AHL deal.
Yeah, I could see Brassard competing for Gambrell's job. Tyler Motte, I think, would fit in nicely on that third line. Definitely a DJ Smith type player. They're not huge needle movers, but I think they're nice little ads. And I mean, Brassard, I know on a PTO, but I guess we'll see what happens with that. Now we're going to do a few predictions that are going to be fun, kind of on the spot. I haven't planned for it because I want to be spontaneous, but Bennett brought this idea to the table, so we're going with it. We're going to do who we see as having the most boom potential this season, the most bust potential this season, and then we're going to do like a player to watch, either where we have low expectations or high hopes, something like that. So Bennett, it was your idea. We'll kick it off with you. Who's your boom potential player?
All right. Well, I think I've gone with pretty predictable choices for these three predictions. But let's just talk about. I mean, boom potential. We've touched on it already. Tim Stützle, right? I mean, this is a guy. He's gonna have great line mates for the first time in his career. He's gonna be starting the season at center, where he scored most of his points last year after being moved there. He's just signed that big deal. He's just he's had a really, healthy and productive offseason. The guy, I mean, like this guy's gonna go boom. I don't even think this isn't even like a prediction. It's just a fact. He's just gonna have a monster year. For bust potential, again, we've touched on it. I see Erik Brännström. I think this will be his last shot with the team. I think that he will not pan out at this point, at least as an Ottawa Senator. He signed that 1-year extension for 0.9 million. I didn't see enough of him last year. I think his defensive game still has some holes in it, and 14 assists in 53 games played when, as you said, Matt, he had some time on the first power play unit in Chabot's absence. I mean, it's replacement level stuff from him. You want to see him do better. I've started to see what DJ Smith sees in him. I watched him several times last year just get bullied off the puck because he's just not as big, and he doesn't, he he is small and he plays small, and there's guys who are small and they play big, and he is not that guy. And lastly, player to watch, again, it's obvious, Alex DeBrincat, right? 41 goal scorer last year, playing with Patrick Kane. We've talked about those Kane Stützle comparisons that have followed him since he was drafted 3rd overall by the Sens. Can he replicate that form? Is he going to take some time to cook, or is he just going to be plug in and play? Let's see.
Other Matt, I'll let you kick off your 3 for here.
Yeah, the boom is Stützle, so I don't really need to go much into that. My bust is actually Jake Sanderson, only because of the expectations that are going to be put on him. I think a lot of people are going to be expecting him to put up a 40-point season, be a Calder Trophy winner, and I just don't see it. I would actually prefer it if he was starting on the 3rd pairing, be a little sheltered and get the opportunity to play against weaker competition and then work him into things. He's going to be an excellent defenseman. I just don't think he's going to be winning the Calder this year, but I'd be happily surprised. My player to watch is Bennett's bust, and it's Erik Brännström. I still have a lot of faith in the guy. I think his puck moving ability is quite impressive. If he puts on some weight over the summer, I think that would really benefit his game. He has all of the tools to do things well, and when he was given the opportunity to do so, we saw it. I just think he needs consistency. Let him play with Nick Holden the entire year and watch him become a solid 3rd pairing defenseman with him. And you have that position and the pairing locked up for years to come.
All right. For Boom, I really want to stray from what the consensus is here, but it's too hard. I'm with you guys. My hype is high for Timmy Stu. I think he's going to have a great season playing with DeBrincat and Giroux, some quality line mates. For bust potential, I don't want this player to be a bust, but I'm just worried. I think Travis Hamonic, he's in your top 4 as a right-hand defenseman. Last season, I don't think he played great in his minutes that he played. He looked okay, but there were definitely times where you could see he's not the defenseman he used to be. And so that worries me on a team that already has right-handed defenseman depth issues. So here's hoping that he plays fine, but that's my worry for bust. I think for player to watch, mine is actually Matt's bust. I think Jake Sanderson is the player to watch. If he can come out of the gate and even just put a solid defensive campaign in, that'll do wonders for the team. If he comes in and he struggles at the NHL level, that's very worrying for the Sens, because now they have to scramble to not find 1, but 2 top 4 defensemen. Yeah. And obviously Jacob Chychrun, however you pronounce it, has been on the radar. Ethan Bear was talked about by Garriock in his latest Sun article. Hey, if you can bring in another piece to help balance out that defensive core, that'd be great. But I think that this D core, at least on a foundational level, is going to rely on Chabot, Zub, and Jake Sanderson. So that's my player to watch. But anyway, on that note, thank you all for watching or listening. First episode of the new season of Senstennial. We're excited to be back. Hopefully we'll be doing some more content this season. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll catch you next week, and go Sens go, because preseason's starting soon.
And you can find us at...
Oh, yes. Thank you, Bennett, for plugging that.
This is a training camp pod.
Training camp podcast. Yeah, you can find us on Twitter at Senstennial, Instagram. We're at the Senstennial Podcast. We're on all the social media, Reddit, Discord. You can find us. So thanks so much, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.
See you guys.
Go Sens go.